here. Hi.
I know, it's always so awkward. I'm like, what do I say?
I know. I'm always like, I forget that when you save it, people come to watch it and they're like watching you in like your room alone as you're getting ready. And it's so awkward.
Yeah.
But hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm so excited we're doing this.
Me too. Finally. We finally figured
Yeah,
out.
I know. So what rotation are you in right now? What are you doing?
Outpatient. So I was with outpatient OB today.
How do you like it?
It was good. It's interesting. It's nice switching up every, day to a different specialty.
Yeah, it is. It's nice, but it's also a little nerve-wracking because you're with like a different team and
totally.
Yeah. I don't miss it. That's tough.
Yeah.
But I actually think oncology nutrition is really important.
Yeah.
Sometimes in the hospital you feel like, what am I doing here? These people don't want to talk to me. They just want their pain meds and they want me to go away. But in oncology, nutrition is so important.
Yeah, totally. And especially outpatient when they're, actually ready to talk about nutrition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, well, I am so excited to do this. I think that our topics tonight are things that just a lot of different questions that people had, lots of the same questions. So I know that people are feeling the same way. So hopefully this is very relatable. But why don't you, since we're on my page, some of these are probably your people and the rest are mine. And so there's a lot of crossover, but introduce yourself. Tell everyone who you are.
Yeah. So I'm Lauren. I run the page Low and Lemons, and I'm a dietetic intern at a hospital in New York City. I'm on the second half of my internship, and I'm doing outpatient nutrition right now, but I'm also seeing some clients on the side, mostly focusing on people who are trying to better their relationships with food, and, being able to eat some of those foods that they deem bad and really opening up the conversation to just eliminating food guilt and being able to enjoy foods and clear up your headspace to have more headspace for other areas of your life. Like, life is very stressful and food should not be one of those things that is stressing you out.
It's so crazy how much time you don't even realize that when you are dieting, especially very restrictively, how much time you spend thinking about food and your body and how much time you can get back when you figure all that stuff out and you're able to focus on other things.
Right.
It's insane. So what made you, because you've kind of like, I've watched your evolution a little bit and we all go through that. I think it's really actually going to make you a better dietitian because you could speak to so many different things. But what made you kind of pivot to the intuitive eating, or we shouldn't call it that necessarily, but a more like food freedom type of approach?
Yeah. So I was always, being in nutrition, everybody always wants you to have the answer. So I'm always dabbling in things and I'm like, should I do this? Should I do that? I dabbled with F Factor for a little bit. And then I was like, this is so restrictive. There's no possible way that I could live like this. And then I was like slowly introducing foods back into my diet. And I've had a disordered eating past where, foods were off limits, or there was a no sugar month and no added sugar this month. And I would literally remember smelling brownies and being like, oh my God, I want one so bad. But like, I had to stick to my discipline, and I think it's taken me a little bit of time just to realize, I'm like, oh, do I want to do weight loss? Do I want to do intuitive eating? What do I want to do? Do I necessarily agree with Hayes? It's a whole another can of worms. But I think that I just realized this is what resonates most with me. And I think that I can be the most of help to women who have struggled in the past with disordered eating, and not necessarily eating disorders, but just disordered eating and food rules and all of that. So, and I'm working with Jamie Mass. She's the best. And really trying to niche down to who I want to speak to. And this has been something that I've been able to find a lot of passion in because I've been through it myself. And I think it's just really important to have a good relationship with food.
Yeah, it is. And it's crazy how many people don't. And it's sad. And I think it's our job to help that, to help change that. But I know because I do work with mostly weight management, but I think most of my clients get much more out of our work together than weight loss. It's really never about the weight at the end of the day.
Right.
But it's really hard, especially in our society, that weight loss is still something that people want. And some people are unhappy in their body. And even though they know that getting stuck in these diet traps aren't necessarily serving them, they don't know how to get out of that without having to throw up their hands and say, like, I'm just going to be overweight, or I'm just going to be a weight that doesn't make me feel good. So it's hard because we want to toe the line between kind of like giving people what they want and also understanding, like, I've been at a heavier weight and I haven't felt totally good there.
Right.
I've been able to, it didn't mean that I was going to necessarily be overly restrictive or like put myself through things, but I didn't feel my most confident. I didn't feel my strongest. There were times where I felt guilty and unhappy. So I understand not wanting to be there, but there's a line between like sacrifices that you're now going into the realm, you're going the opposite way and you're unhealthy by this constant focus on weight loss at all costs, regardless of what's going on with your mental health, if you're binging, if you have all these like weird rules and good foods and bad foods and stigmas around food, that's also unhealthy. So what do we do?
Exactly.
It's hard.
Yeah. So
I think that's where our field is confused.
Right. And confused because there's such a stigma around what you're supposed to do as a dietitian. And I was looking at the Fancy, which I'm so excited you're going to be there.
Yes.
Did you get a lot of feedback that people were going?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah. So we're going to try to plan a happy hour or something.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. I was looking at all of the, talks today.
Andres is going to be there. I'll make sure I introduce you to him.
Cool.
Yeah. He's another RD.
Yeah, I've seen him on your...
He's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the different talks and all the different dietitians that present, and it's like one person's talking about binge eating, one's talking about nutrigenomics, and like there's just so many other aspects of nutrition, and I just can't wrap my head around the people that aren't accepting of other areas of nutrition. Like, do I use MyFitnessPal for my clients? No. Do I think it's bad that you use it for you do, right? Yeah.
On a case-by-case basis.
Okay. Yeah.
We could talk a little bit about that too.
Yeah.
And how I use it.
Right.
Because I think that too, it's one of those things that you can use it for obsession or you could use it for education.
Education. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
And in the way you use things. But if somebody heard, oh, she uses MyFitnessPal, they'd be like, oh my God. Terrible.
Right. Without me saying, at the end of the day, I think part of why people are so confused is because they are confused. They have information, but they don't have the basic information. They have all this like high level information that kind of works in certain diets. So they know that a certain amount of carbs works on one diet, or, this food causes inflammation, but they don't even know how many calories they need a day to maintain their weight and their exercise. So, and then it's like, well, calories, you can't talk about it, but we kind of like, it's like just understanding what your energy needs are, because you're most likely underfeeding yourself, which is then leading to overeating later. Right. So I find for my clients that learning how many calories they need is actually liberating, because it's more than they are trying to eat. So, So in that way, it's not about giving them a number and saying you have to stick to this. It's giving them a number just as a guideline and saying, your lunch should be around X number of calories, because that's going to keep you full. That's going to keep you from binging later. It's going to keep you from having these crazy sugar cravings in the afternoon. So I use it more as a guideline. I also use it to take some of the stigma away from certain foods. For instance, a banana. People just think sugar, sugar, sugar. They don't think, well, it's 100 calories and I eat 100 calories of broccoli with olive oil. So why am I like saying one food is good and one food is bad? Let's just look at it for what it is. All foods are fine. It's just a matter of like when they're going to serve you best.
Right. Exactly.
So yeah, but that's very different than, you know, someone with an eating disorder using MyFitnessPal to not go over 700 or 800 calories.
Right.
Or, you know, so context is important and we don't always get that.
Yeah, exactly. And you're serving your people and everybody else is serving theirs. And it's like your people need you and others need like it's just, that's the way it works. So yeah, should we get into some questions?
Yeah, so we got a couple questions. I pulled some up here.
Yeah, me too.
Let's see what you think. A lot of them are similar. And I think like a good thing to talk about is this idea of cravings and binging and why is that happening?
Right.
And how you might kind of like reverse engineer that.
Yeah.
To see like what's going on and why is this happening? And is this normal? Is it something wrong with you? You're just addicted to sugar, or is there an imbalance somewhere?
Right.
Roll Tide. My Alabama friend.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that, I mean, I haven't had very many clients, but the people that I have worked with, at least, like, actually, I think every single one of them had, like, a binging at night issue. And I don't know that they would necessarily be classified as binge eating.
Yeah, actually, that's a good question, too. How do you differentiate between overeating and a binge?
Right. Because, you know, binge eating disorder is an actual, I think it's like a DSM-5. Yeah.
Yeah, it's in the DSM.
Yeah.
And again, then it gets like very clinical. What is the definition of binge eating? It's eating, I think the definition is eating more than what would be considered normal in a sitting. So again, very subjective to what's considered normal. Like my husband needs a certain amount. Okay. But it's within a certain amount of time. But when I explain binging to clients and what I'm kind of getting at is sometimes we overeat where, let's say we're at tomorrow, Yom Kippur, you're breaking in a fast, and you just eat maybe 2 bagels because you were really hungry. And you don't feel great about it, but it didn't necessarily, you weren't in like that blackout mode where you were like starting to go into self-sabotage mode where you were using it really for comfort. No, you were hungry, you were talking to your Jewish grandmother and you lost track. Yeah. Versus, you know, purposely kind of restricting all day, coming home, being in a really bad mood, going to the refrigerator and like your world shuts off and you're just eating. That's a very different emotional feeling. So I feel like the emotion kind of differentiates it for a lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the diagnosis also, I mean, obviously I'm not a doctor, but from what I've learned in rotation and at the inpatient eating disorder clinics, it's like the binging has to do, like, there's always a restricting part with it too. So it's like, you know, if you don't allow yourself to keep ice cream in the house and then on Friday night you're like, oh, I'm gonna let myself have ice cream tonight, and then you eat the whole pint, like that's not necessarily a healthy behavior. Whereas you can keep ice cream in the house whenever you want, and then on Monday you have a scoop, on Tuesday you have a scoop, on Wednesday you have a scoop, on Thursday you don't want it anymore because you're kind of sick of ice cream. And I think it's really important to teach people that, because when they do remove that restriction, they realize that it's like, oh, this food isn't like, yeah, obviously
it loses its interest. Yeah.
But it's not like, oh my God, I can't wait to have ice cream on Friday night. Like, that's all I want.
And I think that most people they enjoy the lead up to the binge, not the actual binge and the aftermath. Right. So it's taking a food that, you know, you're thinking about this rush that you're going to get, the ice cream that you're going to eat on Friday, and that's really exciting. But then you're in this zone where you're not even like really present.
Right.
So you're not tasting the food, you're not enjoying the food, you're certainly not feeling good about it after. Whereas like going, let's say you're out with your friends in the summer and you get this like artisan ice cream and you have let's say you have a cup of it. Let's say you have a medium and you enjoyed it and you're like, you know what, it's so worth it.
Yeah.
That's very different, even if it's the same amount of ice cream, than eating it with that guilt. So if we're going to be doing it anyway, let's find a way to remove the guilt from it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And if you like, in the end of the day, it's like you remove the guilt and you're eating just as much throughout the week and enjoying it rather than binging on it on Friday night.
Yeah. So at the very worst case scenario, you're at net zero without the guilt and the emotional headache that you're dealing with.
Exactly.
But chances are you know, I know you got shit for this, but I've already made myself pretty clear for me that, yeah, sometimes when you cut out the emotional eating, you're going to lose weight. I can't promise that.
Right.
You can't promise that. But yeah, oftentimes when you are pretty high above your set point and you have these kind of unhealthy eating behaviors that probably stemmed from restrictive dieting, when you no longer do those, you usually do lose weight. Not always. That's not the reason to do intuitive eating or anything like that, but it is a reality. So
it's a reality. And
if that's what brings someone to intuitive eating, I don't care. At least it got them there.
Right. And they're strengthening their relationship with food. And you know, there is this whole, like, obviously body love and body image is always so important, no matter what kind of dieting or eating journey you're on. But there's just such a stigma of that you're not allowed to want to be thin. And it's like, that's what we're taught. Like, all of the supermodels, everybody's thin. So it's like, everybody wants to look like that. Everybody wants to be thin. And then all these people that really do want to strengthen their relationship with food are pushed out because they're like, well,
I can't do both. Now I'm not allowed to.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I can't work on intuitive eating if, like, I want to be thin. But you can. Like, you can work on all of it at the same time. You can work on your body image. You can work on your relationship with food. You don't have to be shamed out of something.
No.
Because everybody has their own.
The truth is, like, when you enter into that sort of approach, typically you're not at the point where you love your body. So I just feel that I would love everyone to get there, but most people aren't there when they start. So start them off, and as they start to heal their relationship with food, the body image improves, the body acceptance improves, but it kind of has to happen later. You can't just have someone say, I fully love my body and I'm so good with it, I'm just going to learn to intuitive eat. Maybe some people are there, but a lot of people aren't. So we should just tell all of them to go somewhere else. Like, go back to Weight Watchers, go back to Jenny Craig. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So I think there's more practitioners that do feel that way, that are a little bit scared, because the Health at Every Size intuitive eating community is very vocal for the most part. Like, usually, actually, they're not the RDs that are very vocal. It's like
the people struggling.
There's like the cult members. That's not what they are. But like, they're like doing the dirty work. They're like out there. They're like, have you read Food Psych? Have you read that? Like, okay, calm down.
Calm down. It's gonna be okay.
See where I'm coming from first.
And,
okay, so
there's just a lot of negativity surrounding around it, which just makes it really unfortunate.
Because it turns most people off to it.
Exactly. It really does. And, you know, there's so many other things that you can be worrying about. And it's a lot. Yeah.
So most times we find that binging is stemming from under-eating. Like, I don't have the statistics, but anecdotally, I would say like 9 times out of 10, if someone is overeating or binging, it's usually a result of restriction. And the other times it's a habit that's probably come about from restriction. So
Yeah.
it usually like starts from restriction and then becomes a habit because you're
Yeah.
doing it every night. And then
Right.
it does require you to have like a hard stop for it. It's not going to happen overnight. The very first thing that you can do is look to what you're eating through the day to make sure that it's balanced.
Right.
Which means protein, fat, and carbs.
Yeah.
Like for me,
Totally.
when I'm looking, you can decide later if you don't want to have fat at a meal or carbs at a meal. But if your eating is all out of control, I think going back to the basics of just a balanced plate with protein, fat, and carbs is kind of necessary.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I think so many people now are on this low carb, craze. And keto, it's actually really funny. I have a presentation on keto. And we had a ketogenic dietitian from the hospital review it. And it's insane how restrictive, I mean, obviously in a therapeutic sense, and when it's necessary, the amount of carbs, I think, is like 4% from your daily calories. Whereas what people think the fad diet of keto is.
Well, that, and what about even the protein?
Right. And the protein's 6% for a therapeutic.
It's,
so, I mean, it varies a little bit, but that's generally what they prescribe.
And so it's not to say now that protein is bad too. No, it's to say that protein in a calorie deficit can also raise your insulin. So protein can be converted into glucose in a calorie deficit. So in the absence of carbs, protein is being converted into glucose. So now what? So you can't trick your body.
Right. Yeah. It's so true.
So there's a time and place for keto. Like you said, it's a therapeutic diet.
Right.
If you have epilepsy, it might be a really good idea. If you have traumatic brain injury, like if you're a football player who gets tons of concussions, there is research that it can be extremely beneficial, but to lose 5 pounds or 10 pounds, I don't get it.
Yeah. And all these people that are on these low carb diets, one, how sustainable is it? Two, when you end up adding carbs in, you realize that so many of these cravings actually diminish because your body, like say you have, a lean protein and vegetables for dinner, which is, that's great. That might work for some people. But for some people, it might be, they need that carb in order to not binge on that ice cream that night. So it's really about finding that balance and figuring out what your body does really need, because some people would rather just have dessert and, not have a carb at their dinner, or some people need both, or some people realize that when they actually start to add carbs back into their diet, that they feel so much better, their cravings subside, their binge eating at night has, completely subsided. So it's really taking a look at like their diet and the components of their diet and what they need to probably add back in.
And I think like the bigger thing that people aren't saying necessarily is that especially with carbs, but I also see it with fats too, like people who've been on very low fat diets, is that they actually are scared to eat carbs. They're scared that if they eat carbs, they are going to gain weight. If you put a bowl of rice in front of someone, or like a roll of sushi with rice in front of someone who's on a strict low carb diet, they would actually be afraid to eat it. That's a problem.
Right.
That's not healthy.
Yeah. No. It's not healthy. It's not healthy to not have carbs, and it's also not healthy for your mental health to just be so restricted. What happens when you go to, what happens when you go to dinner with your boyfriend's parents at a pasta place and you've never met them before? You're going to get the salad when everybody's getting pasta? Like, I mean, that's fine. But
sure, if you want to, but you should be able to get the pasta if that's what you truly want. And if you're like, oh, that pasta looks so good.
Right.
But I can't have it. Why? You're a martyr?
Yeah.
You don't need to. So I think this is a really good question from Simcoe about whether or not you have to limit your protein to 4 ounces. I have a strong opinion on that, but how do you advise people on portion sizes?
So, yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily talk about portion sizes because everybody needs something different. A lot of people that come to me are very, very restrictive with their portion sizes, and they say, well, this box tells me a portion of pasta is 2 ounces. They measure out a portion of pasta and they're like, this is never going to make me full. And I'm like, okay, so let's see. Like, how much do you think you're actually going to want? And, or, you know, maybe make the whole box and portion out yourself a little bowl. And then you can really tap in and see, okay, do I need this much?
Yeah. So I call it a
start...
reference amount. That's actually the
right.
FDA. So you notice how I did FDA food labeling for a little bit. So you notice how 2 ounces is the standard pasta size. If you take a box of Barilla or Banza or Fiber Gourmet or any pasta,
right,
the serving size is 2 ounces.
Yeah.
That's a reference amount. That's just so when we go to the supermarket, we're comparing pasta, it's all 2 ounces across the board. That doesn't mean that that's your portion. That doesn't mean that's what you need. That's just so, okay, so if I have 4 ounces and I double this, it's just like a number. It's just a reference. So you never feel like you're limited to the serving size on the box. So like you, what I do is it depends. So it depends how much guidance the person needs. Most people are usually going to, in my opinion, like their protein portions aren't big enough. They're trying to do like 3 to 4 ounces and they're starving in the afternoon. So I would say for most people, that's not going to be enough. It depends, unless you're eating a good portion of carbs. But if you're not eating carbs and you're not eating very much fat and you're not eating very much protein, then you're just not eating that much. And that's at the end of the day what it is. So if you're eating no carbs and your meal is just protein and vegetables and you're also not eating much protein, you're just eating very little. Yeah. So you have to, so I know for me, if I'm eating a meal that's just protein and vegetables, which honestly is kind of rare. I usually incorporate a carb, but once in a while, like if I'm having a salad or something like that, my protein portion is probably going to be closer to like 6 ounces at least. So use that. If the 4 ounces, that's always just what's given to you, like 4 ounces palm of your hand, but build off that. So if you have 4 ounces and you're finding that like a couple hours later, an hour later, you're still hungry, add another ounce. Okay, now how do you feel? Okay, now the next day, add another ounce. Now how do you feel? Yeah. So you make the nutrition prescription. These are guidelines, but you got to personalize them. So if it feels like too little to you, you have to trust your gut.
Exactly. Yeah, totally.
Wellness for life.
Love that you like
I know all the Instagram names. Low and lemons. Yeah, so that's a good question about protein portions, because I think 3 to 4 ounces is thrown out a lot. You always hear like the deck of cards, 3 to 4 ounces, but you know, it does come down to context. As I was talking about today in my post, like I can't necessarily tell you how much protein to have at a meal unless I know what else you're having at that meal, unless I know what you had for breakfast, what you had for dinner, what you have for everything else. Yeah. So yeah, and just individual.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the whole thing with personalized nutrition. Like that's why people, you know, hire coaches and everything, because the recommendation might be 3 to 4 ounces, but it's like, that's so generalized. Like the whole point of nutrition is to be individualized. And I think that people take these recommendations and they think, and that's where another restriction comes in. It's like, oh, I saw it should be 4 ounces and that's all I can have.
And you feel bad because you saw someone else having only 4 ounces and they're thin and something's wrong with me because I'm still hungry.
Right. No. Exactly.
And you don't know what else that person's eating in the day.
Yeah. You don't know that. You also don't know how many, you know, miles they walk to work.
That's true,
how many, you know, they drive to work. They work out 3 hours a day.
How much sleep they have. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, there's so many other factors. And I mean, it's totally normal to fall victim to this, but I feel like sometimes you're questioning everything. Like, even being a nutrition professional, you're like, well, like, am I supposed to be doing this? Am I supposed to be doing that? And it's just about, you know, you have to stay true to what you believe in.
It's really hard though.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really hard. And all of it sounds right.
Yeah. And everybody wants you to have the answer that they want to hear. So I'm reading this one.
Yeah. It's exhausting. So yeah, there's a lot to unpack probably there after 18 years of dieting. And I know like even my clients who are in their 20s come to me and they're like, I've been dieting since I'm 12.
Yeah.
So
I had someone dieting since they were 8 on Weight Watchers.
what we have to kind of look at is if you're constantly struggling, let's say you're trying to follow some plan wherever you may have gotten in and you're constantly struggling to do it, stop pointing the finger at yourself as someone who can't follow it and look at this is not the plan for me because I keep trying to do it and it's not happening. So whether it's just not the right amount of food for you or whether it's that you have some kind of like underlying stuff that you got to work out, you know, mental, emotional, all that kind of stuff, beliefs about food. One question I kind of want something that I have my clients do, and this actually from the intuitive eating workbook, is to just make a list of their their good and bad foods, whether or not they know where it came from. Like, what are the foods in your head that are good or bad?
Yeah,
that's it. Write them down. Then we go back and we break them down. Like, why do you think this?
Right. Totally. Yeah.
Where'd you get this from? And even then, sometimes they're like, my mom friend from tennis was doing this diet and she told me that. And it's like, okay, out.
Yeah.
You know, beets have too much sugar. Out. Where did that come from? That came from Atkins saying you can only have 12 grams of carbs from vegetables.
Right.
That's why beets had too much sugar there. But for the rest of the world, they don't. So, you know.
For the average human being. But, and I think with 18 years of dieting, there's a lot to unpack. And, you know, maybe you don't have to lose those 7 pounds. Maybe that's where your body after, you know, you had a couple of babies. Like, that's awesome, you know? And it's okay if you want to lose weight and you do want to lose those 7 pounds. But also, sometimes if you really heal that binge and restrict cycle, you might just naturally feel better. And you might be healing the mental aspect of it. And it could make a really big difference.
Yeah. So with that stuff, when I'm trying to kind of like get an idea of it, does this person actually have to lose weight, or is this like pressure that they're putting on themselves to be the weight that they were pre-baby or whatever it is, or the weight that someone else is? I start to say, well, if we were to look just as objectively as possible at your diet, are there habits that you have right now that maybe could be improved? Like, how many glasses of wine are you having per week? Or I don't know, like what kind of dressing do you use? Is there a better option that's going to bring you as much joy? Like those little things, what could you be doing that isn't healthy? Or are you binging on certain days? Well, let's unpack that and see why is that happening first. So and that's the thing. Most people would probably be fine with the 7 extra pounds if they felt good about how they were eating. If they were like, I'm eating perfectly, I'm exercising, I never feel guilty about food, you'll deal with the 7 pounds. But when you feel like I'm 7 pounds heavier than I want to be because I have these cravings at night, then you don't feel so good about it. So it's more that you have to start looking at, well, what are you stressed from? Is that something that you can improve? Like with the cravings at night too, I also tell people, like, it's not crazy to want something sweet at night. Right. So plan something in.
Yeah. And cravings at night from stress, like that's a behavior that you can it's getting to the root of that first. You know, what's stressing you out? Can we incorporate maybe some meditation or some mindfulness practices? Maybe you want to journal in the morning. Maybe it's the babies.
Got to get rid of them now.
But I think, this is where, your body's confused. Yeah, because you have so many sources of information telling you different things. And you're like, okay, I eat a salad for lunch and then I'm hungry right away. And it's like, you don't know where you're supposed to add protein. You don't know where you're supposed to have a carb. You don't know you don't know your hunger cues from your fullness cues. Like it's just, it's really difficult when there's a lot of, you know, nutrition information out there. And I think getting to the root of the problem is always really important.
Yeah, and I think also identifying what's truly the biggest problem. Is it that dairy causes inflammation? Really, is that your biggest problem? Because how does that even affect you on a day-to-day basis?
Exactly.
Or is it that you're scared to eat dairy because a bunch of random people on Instagram told you so?
Right.
And truly, is that what's going to kill you? Is that really what the problem is? I always say, like, no one has ever died from those things. No one. Actually, like one of my friend Livy says that more people died from organic lettuce last year than they did from GMOs.
Yeah.
Because of salmonella. So, you know what? Something else is going to get me. It's not going to be, it's not going to be having 5 ounces of protein.
Exactly.
So that's where I say, like, the first thing is start to really break down truly, like, what are the things you really have to worry about? You know, like, really, what's the biggest thing? Is it terrible that I eat, even if it's like I say, if I have a Diet Coke or a regular Coke, or I have Heinz ketchup, because I put my Heinz ketchup on eggs and it makes me enjoy them. I put a tablespoon.
Right.
So I should just skip that and then instead eat something that I'm not going to enjoy, because is a tablespoon even going to kill you? No. So a lot of times these things are so just exaggerated. And then something Jordan Science always says is when you hear something like that, say it out loud and say it back to the person. So he always says, so you're saying that fruit makes you fat?
Yeah.
And then he says, slow it down. It's so fruit is the problem. Fruit's what's making you fat. And when you say it like that, you're like, we're all kidding ourselves.
Right.
We're trapped. It's really, like, it's craziness.
It's insane.
And it's hard because there's a ton of societal pressure. There's pressure that we put on ourselves to get back into a certain pair of jeans that we may have had before. It's also like, there's also that place where when you do feel better about your relationship with food, like I've said before, I'll take 5 extra pounds on me to not have to worry about all of this.
Okay.
I might not be happy with 20 extra pounds, but I'm not going to be 20 extra pounds if I have a good relationship with food.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And Katie, yes.
Oh, I'm so glad you guys are enjoying this. Yeah, you guys eat up.
Yeah. And
you'll see when we go to Fancy too, we'll do some stuff. But when we were at our last RD retreat for our mentorship weekend, you got to see like how RDs eat. I was at brunch with my friend Ben and his girlfriend this weekend. He's a type 1 diabetic, and he's like, we're ordering the French toast, we're sharing it, we don't finish things. It's just, I wasn't always like that. I was a psycho. Like, you should see my food journals from when I was younger. I was a psycho. It took me a long time to get there. I think what changed for me was education, and that's why like I'm really big on trying to give as much information as possible, because I think like when you have that, it makes it a lot easier to just stay true to yourself and also trust that you're on the right path.
Totally. And all these ideals around food that it's like, we're so forced to believe that sugar is like causing cancer and causing all these other things.
Right.
It's like, are you really looking into what that person's lifestyle is? Like, are they really stressed out? I mean, not necessarily as much with cancer, but with like cardiac implications, or
even diabetes or heart disease. When they say, for instance, red meat is associated with heart disease. Okay. Well, association. So we could talk about like correlation and causation. We can pretty much never ever tell you that something causes something other than smoking causes lung cancer. We can say that.
Right.
But you know how many years it took for us to get there? You know, so like whenever you hear something, like I'll hear crazy things, especially now with the gut microbiome. Like this is crazy now.
Yeah.
but this causes something.
Mhm.
When the nutrition research is done, we can't take a person and we can't give them like stuff them with carbs and wait for them to die. We can't do that type of research. We don't have that. So when we do research, we're looking at, okay, the people who had heart disease, what did they do? They ate more red meat. They didn't exercise. They ate Swedish fish all day. They smoked. They drank alcohol. But you don't hear all those factors when you read the article. So you can correlate pretty much anything. You could correlate if you look at right now. So total cause mortality of cancer is down since the 90s. It's down. There's less incidence of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, but more people are worried about pesticides causing non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, even though the rates are down.
Right.
So we have to look at, like, we're doing pretty well as a society. And like, when we look at the things that, the big picture of things that do lead to death, there are preventable causes of death. Heart disease can be prevented with a good diet, but it's not from the girl who had one piece of white bread and a beautiful arugula salad with salmon, you know? So you have to look at that balance. And as long as you like are pretty in the middle, you're not going to wind up there.
Right.
So realize too, like, that's the other part of it is like, first there's like weight that we're talking about, and then we're talking about now like what's going to kill us,
right?
Or what's going to give us acne, or what's going to give us all these things. And so now there's like a whole other layer of things to care about in the name of wellness.
Right.
And people are crazier than ever. You follow Lee from America?
Oh, yes. I don't think I follow her anymore.
At some point I had to unfollow her, but I saw recently she did a video. There's some kind of series called like Unwell, basically how the crazy wellness culture actually leads you to being unwell. So she kind of went out with her story of how she was the ultimate wellness guru, doing with the crystals and all the stuff. Matcha enemas and all craziness. Meanwhile, she was more depressed, more unwell, more socially isolated than anyone. And so now she's kind of coming out to say, like, this is all a big lie. Yeah. For the most part. Like, you can't cover up like the fact that you don't have these things straight. You don't have your mental health with crystals and matcha enemas. Yeah. Can't do it.
Yeah. And that was a big part of my, like, I had a lot of anxiety in college, and my, like, almost cover up was that, oh, I'm going to get a healthy diet to really help with my anxiety. And it looked from the outside like I was so healthy because I'm like, oh, no sugar, eating all these healthy fruits and vegetables. But really, in terms of my well-being, I was at the worst point in my life. And from the outside, it really looks like, especially with her, it looks like she had the best life. She just gets a puppy. And not shaming her in any way, like, she's fully come out and talked about this, but like with the matcha and with like her huge social media following, and like that's similar to how my journey was, where it looked like I had it all. But the reason behind all of it was because I had so much anxiety around food and so much anxiety just in general, and it's just not contributing to your well-being.
No.
But I also think there's an issue with BMI, and it's very unreliable.
It is unreliable. Even just like ideal body weight. I always say, like, when I ask people I ask for usual body weight, and this is always tricky because I'll ask them, where is your weight when you're not micromanaging anything? And most people can't tell me. They're like, I don't know. I've been dieting for 20 years. I'm like either on a diet or off, so I don't know where my natural weight is supposed to be. So that's what's so hard. So I always kind of use that as like my gauge for what a healthy weight should be like for you. I also think that many people at a BMI of 30, which is considered overweight, are not at risk for any of these factors of these diseases too. So you do have to look, when we look on an individual level, is your blood work good? Are you exercising? Are you getting your water? Are you sleeping? Do you have good relationships? You're not worried then. Yeah. So it's like a way to weed out at the very opposite ends of the extreme. So being on the very low end of BMI is just as dangerous as being on the very high end of BMI too. To like being very underweight puts you at risk for a lot of things too. So being somewhere in the middle, even if it means you're overweight by the scale, if it, a doctor might kind of take your weight and see that you're there, but without asking a lot of questions, they can't necessarily know if you're healthy. Same goes if your BMI is 20 or 22, but you're binging and purging and over-exercising, you're not healthy either. So it doesn't tell the whole picture.
Yeah. It's definitely not a great indicator. Which, I mean, that's just like by looking at someone. You can look at some of these like Fitspo people and like think they're so healthy, but they could very well be restricting. They could very well be exercising 4 hours a day, and but it's just on the outside that they look like they're some of the healthiest people, where someone with an overweight BMI could be their healthiest and happiest they've ever been. So it's very deceiving.
So anti-anxiety medications and weight gain. So it's hard. That's hard because they don't really know. There's no clear mechanism of why certain anxiety medications or depression medications cause weight gain. Like the more obvious and good things are that sometimes, and this happened for me when I was started anti-anxiety and depression medication, I was just a happier human and I was socializing more. And like when I was at that, not anymore, but at that time when I was really stressed out, I wouldn't eat. So like just by getting my happiness back, I was going out to dinner more, I was dating more, I was drinking more, like in a social aspect. So I did gain weight at that point, but that was explainable. Sometimes there is no way to explain it. I know that a few of the doctors that I work with who prescribe our clients medications will say there are certain medications that are like less likely to cause weight gain. So with eating disorders, a lot of times they'll kind of put them on those medications. So if that is something that is a concern, talk to your doctor about it. Don't just like get off the medication or feel like there's no hope, because there might be the right combo of meds. Sometimes they have to give you 2 different meds too. So ask questions, and if your doctor can't answer them, find a new doctor. So sometimes, like, I know I've had a psychiatrist who has 15-minute slots and you're in. And for me, if I just was going in there to get my maintenance medication and come out, it was fine. But if you really need to like adjust your medication.
And be your own advocate too, because a lot of people will just write you off, and do your own research. There's plenty of people that come into the hospital and I've seen them and they're like, this is what I want, because they've heard about it on TV, and like whether or not that might be the right option for them, at least they brought it up and at least they're advocating for themselves.
And at the very least, your healthcare provider, whether that's a doctor or dietitian or therapist or whatever, should be able to give you like a good answer without just saying, oh, that's stupid. Because a lot of it might be it might be like, my dad is the ultimate with reading something or seeing something on TV and like he's ordering it the next day, and I'll tell him, I'm like, Dad, that's not how this works, and he just won't want to hear it. But I'll at least be able to say, okay, well, this is why it doesn't work. Here's the reasons why, and here are some good resources for you to look into it on your own. So at the very least, like, bring it up. Don't be embarrassed. You hear all kinds of things, but a good practitioner should be able to like give you a reason, yes or no.
Totally.
So,
and I think that's a great idea for writing down cues with meds. Like it's almost like someone who's getting a lot of distress with certain foods. Like you would tell them, okay, write down how this food makes you feel. With medication, it can be very similar. Like how you're feeling on a daily basis of that particular medication, and sharing that with your doctor. It gives them a lot more to work off of than being like, this isn't making me feel good. Like they're not going to be able to help that much. They're not body. They don't know what you're feeling. So yeah.
And I also think like making sure that you're combining the medication with other therapy modalities like talk therapy, meditation, exercise, all of those things, because sometimes you really do need both.
Totally. Yeah. And all of these things really do come together.
Yeah.
It's very similar too with people working on their food, food freedom journeys. A lot of them are seeing therapists, and that's great. Because, we can collaborate and
For the
figure
most
out the
part.
best solution,
Yeah. I'd say we work pretty closely with therapists. Like, I have a standing call with most of my clients' therapists just to make sure we're on the same page, and we're not, because I've also worked with therapists who would be telling them like one thing or telling them something about food without knowing really what we were working on. So that's important to get your healthcare providers to talk.
Yeah, totally.
But so the new me Amy lost 120 pounds, and it made her feel worse because her mental health suffered. And I think like when you lose that amount of weight, that you have been on a journey that no one else, unless they've been on the same journey, will truly understand. Yeah. And whether it's 120 pounds or whatever it is, you wind up almost being in this like own little world that only you kind of know. And that I'm sure as you got closer and closer to your goal, like things get more extreme, and your relationship with food gets more complicated. So when people give me an ultimate goal weight when they come to me, I'll write it down. I'll say, okay, when they start losing weight, what I'll say is when they have to start getting so strict, it's probably not a realistic weight for them. Right. If you have to cut out everything and exercise a crazy amount, it's probably not a realistic weight for you, which means that to maintain that weight, you're going to have to do crazy things for the rest of your life. And that's not really a way that you should live. So that's how I kind of determine the goal weight. So not sacrificing my mental health for my weight. So now trying to incorporate better portion control and keeping up the training. That's great. So focusing on behaviors, like really could I get another workout in if it's appropriate that week? Or could I be drinking more water? Could I be sleeping more? Could I be meal planning or meal prepping? Doesn't mean everything has to be weighed or measured, but can I plan out my meals so I know I have a really nourishing meal to bring with me to work?
Yeah, totally.
Those are all fine.
Yeah.
Organic fruits and veggies.
I think you're good at this because you've done that live with, what's her name?
With Livy.
Yeah,
we're gonna do another one. So overall, first of all, if all fruits and veggies are good. So at the end of the day, I would say going organic is more first of all, it's a privilege because it is more expensive. It's also not nearly as widely available, but it also to me is not something that I would prioritize for most people. So I kind of think of like levels of health that you have to kind of like almost like Mario that you have to get past before you worry about that later. So first you get down just like energy balance. How much food makes me feel good? At what times? Like what's this cadence that I like to eat to just give me energy through the day and just make me feel overall good. Once you have that down, then we start focusing on optimal exercise. What kind of exercise do you like to do? And like how many times a week should you do it? Then we focus on, water and sleep and maybe supplements at that point. Is there something that you could be doing to enhance that? At like the very, very, very top of the pyramid, the last thing that I would probably worry about, but if you're there and you want to even make it even better, then you can start looking at like organic versus conventional. The research does not confer like any benefit to organic over conventional produce. Most people's concerns with it are the pesticide use. So there are certain pesticides that are allowed to be used in conventional agriculture that aren't allowed to be used in organic agriculture. There are also certain pesticides that are allowed to be used in organic agriculture. They're just natural rather than synthetic. And everyone hears the word natural and it's automatically better, but formaldehyde is natural.
Right.
There's molds are natural. There are a lot of things, opium's natural. There are a lot of things that are natural that doesn't make them automatically good. So that's like one of those logical fallacies that people use. Well, it's natural pesticides. So what? That doesn't mean anything.
Right.
So, and it also it doesn't mean anything either way, that either one is bad, but that's the argument that you'll see. So there's one group, the EWG, who puts out the Dirty Dozen and Clean 15 every year, and they're sort of like not well liked in the scientific community because their methods they use their own methods for picking those out. So what they do basically is they test fruits and vegetables, and they tell you these are the top 12 fruits and vegetables that we found to have the most pesticides when tested. Now what they don't tell you is that the level of safe pesticides that you can intake are so much higher than what's found there.
Yeah.
They also don't tell you that organic fruits and vegetables can also have remnants of those pesticides too. So this is where like the dose makes the poison. So at the end of the day, am I worried about eating organic versus conventional? I'm usually buying what's on sale, to be honest. Yeah. Or like if I really like Honeycrisp apples and they're only organic, I'll buy them. But I'm not necessarily going out of my way one or the other. I like the organic carrots at Whole Foods. I think they taste better. So like that's the only preference that I really put there.
Totally.
I don't know. Again.
Yeah, it's what you think is, best for you. If you feel better on organic food.
The other thing is like I know that there are other arguments about them, like I should say like sustainability and ethical arguments. What I will say though with the sustainability argument is that organic farming is actually apparently less sustainable than conventional because it uses more water and more resources. So if the whole world switched to organic, we would have less food supply to feed the whole world. So when we're looking at like us, here in Long Island, New York, we're not really caring about the people that we have to feed out in the middle of the country. But the truth is that some of these policies are in place because of that too. So they're basically bigger political things. We might get cut off. I'm just letting you know.
Okay. At the hour.
Yes.
Okay.
So
well, no, because we started that new one, didn't we?
I don't know.
When
actually.
I got cut off. I don't know.
So if we get cut off, we could come back if you want.
Supplements and all of that, I think that's a whole nother beast.
I usually rule of thumb is like unless you have something that you're trying to treat, like vitamin D deficiency, something that comes up on a blood test, like I just don't really waste my time too much with them. Magnesium for migraines, like there are definitely some things, but if you don't have a problem, you don't have to go looking for supplements basically. Do I take any supplements?
Don't.
I've taken omega-3s because I don't eat fish.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I just don't like it.
Yeah.
So I've taken omega-3s. Honestly, I haven't been that great about it. I've taken probiotics, but for me, I have ulcerative colitis, and it doesn't work well for me. So, other than that, I don't really